Thank you for joining us for this podcast session. I'm delighted that we're able to bring together a selection of eminent experts from around the Cresa network to talk to us generally across the 4 or 5 of us about what we're seeing in our markets, in our regions, and perhaps spot some of the trends that we think are going to settle into establish new ways of using office space. Equally, we've got to reflect on some of the things that have gone well over the last year, because there's been lots of them, the influence of technology for one. So without further ado, I'd like to start with perhaps our most significant contributor in terms of numbers of people and complexity of markets, and that's you, Alan. What have you seen over the course of the last year across the US, and what are you seeing locally that you think is kind of worth noting, and what are you thinking about for the future?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So, I think you'd break it down into phases over the past year, where into early last year, it was really just dealing with the immediate, right? Companies were just trying to just make it through and figure things out on the go. There was no playbook, trying to stabilize, figure out opportunities if there were any to get some relief with that hit. And then companies started getting their legs under them and figuring out that, we can work in a different way than what we're accustomed to, and productivity can maintain. I think that into this year, companies are ready to take on the challenge of really, using this. And again, it's hard to say, as opportunistic, but really to reset, just hit the start over button and reimagine their workplace, their workforce, and be really creative. And there's lots of dynamics that we know overlay, which include just the macroeconomics and dynamics of the markets, where companies, occupiers that we represent, can be really strategic and thoughtful about what they do going forward. So I'm optimistic this is going to be a really exciting time going forward to help companies, and again, work through, reimagine their workforce and footprint.
Okay, great. So on that theme of optimism, it's natural that I'd turn to Charles next. So Charles, when you think of Western Europe, as I think we now say, our friends and neighbours in mainland Europe, what are your views for your markets, in France in particular?
Yes, thank you, Chris. Friends and neighbors, indeed. So the analysis is pretty similar to what Alan said. There was a first shock, then trying to understand what was happening, and today companies are still thinking. Most of them are still thinking about what is possible. In terms of trends, what we do see happening right now is there are a couple of words that we hear more and more. Of course, contract flexibility is one. Reducing costs by whichever means is the other. So we're seeing lease renegotiations, successor tenant searches, subtenant searches, whatever legal contract possibility that is given is being studied as we speak. To Alan's point, workplace is totally being redefined. In our part of the world, we're seeing a switch between the 70-30, the 70% workstations and 30% meeting, which is switching around, as the use of the office is now totally switching around. And the last theme is work from home, of course, which could be the first. Something that was totally unimaginable at the beginning of last year is now becoming totally normal, which is, at least in our part of the world, spending 2 days per week as a minimum working from home. So that has, of course, a lot of influence on the workplace and the use of the office.
Okay, thanks. And as we continue eastwards, Piotr, you clearly have worked from home, but wrapped yourself in Cresa to give yourself the illusion that you are still in the office. What are you seeing? What are you seeing in Eastern Europe?
Well, quality illusion helps, but we just got the new banner, so I'm testing. I hope it does the job. Central Eastern Europe. We view the situation from many different angles, and I agree what has been said before. we were in shock. We are almost out of shock, and we can imagine what normality is, or what it has been before March last year. Industrial was booming during second part of 2020, and is still booming across the region. From our perspective, we have best ever year in industrial. That doesn't stop. Manufacturing continues, e-commerce demands, relocation of supply chains from Asia, China, combined with all the geopolitical discussions which are taking place with the economic superpower. So we are, as a region, massive beneficiary of the industrial and logistics events. With office, I think that the tenants are getting the idea what they want in terms of reducing the costs, reducing or hiring quality staff, applying all the distancing procedures, and well, with an assumption that COVID will stay with us for the next 2 years. I think they're coming with grips that they don't need less space. They need the same amount of space, but at a reasonable cost. So extensive renegotiations, various attempts to reduce costs are happening across the markets. Retail, we don't know how to define it at the moment. Shopping centers are closed. They will remain closed. E-commerce is booming, and there will be some serious casualties in the process.
Yeah, okay. We can all identify with that last point. So Dick, as we sort of turn to Hong Kong, China, I'm certainly hearing a lot of stories of there being something of a return to normality, but maybe it's different on the ground. How are you seeing it?
Definitely, there's been a return to normality, I would say, late last year. People are working in the offices because the pandemic has been controlled by China and in Hong Kong. All landlords are seeing higher expenses in all buildings. They have to ramp up their hygiene, their environmental protection, and their building specs and aircon. So to run a building, a commercial building, is going to be more expensive for landlords. What we are seeing within the industry, flexibility on all type of leases with landlords. There's lower demand. Although people are trying to get into the office, the e-software and options are really competing with the office space users. So people are encouraged to be able to have a flexible work from home, and it's competing with the actual office space user. So that's become a big factor. All types of different Chinese softwares that pop up, and like Teams or Zoom that we're on at the moment. Many tenants are trying to put in pandemic clauses. That is being batted back by all landlords in Singapore, Hong Kong, and China. And then all tenants are moving to look at fitted offices without spending capex. The demand will be lower. And from a geopolitical point of view, the big winners, I think, in Asia will be in the office space. Singapore, from a geopolitical point of view, and Shenzhen being in the Greater Bay Area of China, because it will be a backup for Hong Kong users and cheaper.
Okay, some fascinating trends. I think, you know, from the UK point of view, we see everything that has been discussed on this call in terms of that general sense from occupiers that right now is not the time to make a long-term bet. Now is the moment to just give yourself time and space, in every sense of the word space, to consider what the future looks like and then adjust your strategy and implement based on that. And a lot of the work that we're doing here is actually just helping clients move things forward. I think the really positive thing, and we probably all share this, is that people are now talking about moving things forward in some shape or form. 2020 was a year of kind of confusion and to an extent stagnation, whereas I think now most people have recognized that it's time to get culture going again within businesses. It's time to let colleagues meet each other, many of whom have joined businesses and they've never even met their boss, let alone their co-workers. So it's an interesting time ahead. But look, fascinating to share experiences with you. Thank you for your time. If the viewers have any questions of us, please do reach out through the usual channels. But for now, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wishing well.